Hello from Liverpool. So this is a video I've been meaning to make for a while and I've got a lot of requests for it. It's basically a guide to passing your PLAB 1 while you're working, because I know a lot of us give it during internship or house job or after we finish our internship and start working independently. So managing your time and preparing for an exam is really hard. So you need a realistic guide on how to actually do that. And that's basically what this video is going to be. So I'm going to be covering my timeline, what resources I used, how I actually approached the exam, because it's becoming trickier the more they're transitioning towards UKMLA, and I'll explain as I go along. So the first thing is my timeline. I gave my IELTS in Jan of 2022, and my internship ended in May of 23. I started my job as a casualty medical officer in July for my bond, and I gave my PLAB 1 in November 2022. So the thing is, I gave the November attempt, which is the winter attempt. I think my exam was tough from personal experiences. I think it was very long, and the key aspect to keep in mind is like time management. But anyway, so how do you start your preparation? You start with choosing a question bank. So most people prepare for PLAB 1 by themselves, just by going through the question banks and seeing what questions are asked, what the format is like, and the resources attached to it. So there are a couple of options available to you in terms of question banks. The popular ones are PLABable. This is the most common name you probably would have heard like 1,000 times, and you're probably already using it. It's a great resource. It's got 3,400 plus questions. The explanation can be a bit variable. Some of the questions are more detailed and some of the questions have more of an explanation. The notes are somewhat detailed as well. It does not give you any links to guidelines or links to like YouTube videos. For someone like me, I'm a very visual learner and I learn better that way. And you can reset it for a fee. I have put a comparative guide for all the different question banks on my website. The link is below. There is an app which makes it very easy to study when you're working in the hospital, especially when you've got a bit of time between patients. So it's very easy to go through the questions. The other commonly used resources are Past Medicine, Med Revisions, and Past Test. A lot of people use Med Revisions, which is also supposed to be really good and has detailed explanation and study notes, but again, it doesn't have links to guidelines. I used PLABable and Past Medicine. I used Past Medicine just because someone had recommended it to me, so I was like, I'll give it a shot. And it gives a very detailed explanation, some of which might not be required. Like, it gives a lot of details, it gives you links to nice guidelines, it gives you YouTube videos to watch. So it's a very good resource for learning. But as you get closer to the exam, PLABable is the way to go. So once you've taken a question bank, I would recommend getting 2 question banks. Get PLABable at least, that has to be your primary resource, and get another question bank to build on the knowledge. Since I had a lot of time to prepare for my PLAB 1, because I gave it after internship, I had around 6 months. So I started with Past Medicine first, and then I switched to PLABable the closer it got to the exam. So I'm gonna put the link for the comparative guide. I've got a couple of pictures from the question bank so you can see what it looks like. You can see how the interface is if you like it. They have a lot of free trials as well, so you can try them out if you'd like. PLABable, again, this I started using 4 months before the exam. So they have a lot of mocks as well, which are very important. Coming to study notes, so these were the apps and the question banks. PLAB 1 Keys is a very good study resource. You will get, it basically summarizes a lot of the information you need to know for the exam, and it's very good for quick revisions. Plabbable comes with something called Plabbable Gems and Seeds. Again, very quick summaries of high yield information that you need to know for the exam. Again, whenever I was traveling, because I'm from Bombay and we traveled for hours across the city because the traffic is terrible. But whenever you're traveling, whenever you've got a bit of downtime, I would just go through the gems and the seeds, and it made life much easier because carrying notes around can be a little bit cumbersome. So having the gems and the seeds on my phone really helped to go through. Other resources, if you're ever in doubt about what the question banks are answering, if you don't agree with it, you can use the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine. This is a standardized resource. I used it for a couple of questions for my theory exams in final year as well, because it summarizes the topic very well. It's like a really tiny book and it gives you a lot of information in that little bit of space. So it's very good for like confirming if your answers are actually legit, clarifying any doubts that you have. So again, you don't have to read through the entire book. It's just, I mean, you can if you like. It's a really nice book. But if you have any doubts, it really helps to clarify those. I did find a couple of notes for developmental milestones and immunization, because these are the worst things ever. You need to memorize them. So I've added those on the website as well. You can find them below. So how did I plan? The thing with any exam is you need to have a plan to do, like to pass it or to do well, because we're so short on time when we're working. And we had like very long 24-hour shifts. So how did I squeeze in the questions and the preparation? I made spreadsheets which were subject wise, which break down high yield topics for the exam. I've again put it in the website and below. I also color coded them as topics that I was least confident in. So for instance, I know the chest pain guidelines really well, so that would go in green. Or I knew MI pathology and stuff like that really well, so that was green. Things that I struggle with, so for example, if I struggled with PE and how to manage them, then I would put that in red. So that color coding helped me narrow down the things that I needed to revise closer to the exam. I've put the spreadsheets down so you can take a look. I also then gave mocks. So mocks were very important because Plabbable at my time gave 17 mocks for free, included in the subscription that you get. And these I think are the most important because they help you manage your time. They help you figure out where you're going wrong, what subjects you're struggling with, what topics you're not great at. And it's easier to do the question bank when you're doing it subject wise. It's harder to do it when it's a mock exam with random questions from random subjects, because you get a bias. When you're supposed doing cardiology questions, you're only thinking from a cardiology mindset. But when you have an actual exam to switch from cardiology, neurology, pediatrics, that is harder to do, and you need to train your mind to figure out how to do that. These principles sort of work with all MCQ exams. And with every mock exam that I gave on Plabbable, I made sure to analyze the results. So wherever I was going wrong, you'll see it in my spreadsheet. I've written the percentage that I got. The point was in the percentages. I started with like 60% and then I ended around 80. So the point is to grow, to have an upgoing graph from all your mocks. Don't focus on the percentages too much, but focus on rectifying your mistakes and figuring out where you're going wrong. So every time I did the paper, I've written the specialty that I got the most wrong answers from. So if it was OBGYs, contraceptives, which is really hard, orthopedics, if it was psychiatry that I was struggling with. So I've written it all down, and it gives you a very nice visual summary of the subjects I'm shit at. So welcome to that information. So mocks, again, mocks are very important. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're doing your mocks is use the OMR sheet. There are templates available for OMR sheets, because the thing is, when we're working, we sort of get out of the practice of bubbling OMR sheets, because most exams across the world are now done on computers. But for some reason, PLAB 1 is still an OMR based exam. So print out the sheets and start bubbling them, because you don't realize that it actually takes time to do that. It's not as easy as clicking the right answer. So practice that, analyze your results, and try to simulate the exam, figure out your time management. Again, the exam is not very tricky, but managing your time is very hard, because you have 180 questions to do in 180 minutes. So you have 1 minute per question. That includes reading the question. And in my exam, the question stems were very long. It was more like an MRCP question where they gave a history, they gave investigations, they gave ECGs, and then there was a question. So going through all of that information in 1 minute, analyzing it, looking at the options, and then figuring out an answer, and bubbling your OMR sheet is is a big task. So yeah, manage your time. The more you practice, the faster you'll get, because you start figuring out the patterns in the exam. So practice is what will get you there. Make a list of your own. If you don't like spreadsheets, you can make like a handwritten list of topics you keep getting wrong over and over again, or topics you're not confident about, and these are the things you want to revise before the exam. And don't get disheartened by the results of the mocks. I know a lot of people who give exams, and a lot of exams are now based on preparing through question banks, and they get really disheartened. For example, UWorld and USMLE, because the question banks are made to be tough, and it's not the results you're supposed to be looking at, but where to improve. So coming to exam day tips, this exam is a bit nerve-wracking because it's really hard to get dates. Not because the exam is very tough, but because getting dates is very, very, very hard, and the exam is a bit tricky. So before the night, get a good night's sleep, keep your passport ready, reach early if you can, because the exam centers might not be somewhere you've been before. So make sure that you get there early, figure out where the entrance is, where to sit. Have a good breakfast. You don't want to get hypoglycemic. I think my mom and I, we went to McDonald's before it. Pee before the exam. It was very cold in my exam center, so pee before the exam. And I really had to pee in the exam. Do not keep marking the answers for the end. If you're doing the OMR sheet, if you're sure about an answer, mark it right then and there, because what happens is in the end you run out of time. So if you're going to keep marking all the answers for the end, you will run out of time, and I will guarantee you that, because the questions are quite long. At least they were for me. Maybe it's different every time. But yeah, mark the answers. Only the questions you're unsure about, you can come back to and review them later. Mark those at the end, but whatever you're sure about, mark it right then and there. And that's it. Like PLAB 1 is like any standard MCQ exam. It's not tough in terms of, they don't expect you to have a lot of depth of knowledge. They're not going to ask you, for instance, if you're from India, if you've given NEET, they're not going to ask you random factoids about, oh, what is this pathological slide for, and stuff like that. Even USMLE for that sake. It's not based on preclinical very heavily. It's more clinically correlated. So it's not the toughest exam. It's tricky in terms of managing your time, as I mentioned before, because you have very limited time to go through all the questions. And understanding that and practicing enough really helps. One of the things that I regret not doing while I was doing my PLAB 1 prep was that I didn't do all the mocks. I didn't have enough time for it. I only did 13 mocks. There were 17. So I would recommend finding the time to do all the mocks, because I realized much later that these are what are more helpful than actually doing the question bank over and over again. I had done PLABable at least once throughout, and then the mocks, and past medicine I'd done once as well. So yeah, Another pro tip I can give you is that you'll figure out what the high yield questions are from the question banks, because those are repeated often. So you know that in cardiology, MI, ACS is very important because there will be like 20 questions on it. Whereas some random cardiology topic is going to have less questions on it. So try to focus on the questions that are asked more often if you're short on time. Have a focused approach, and you will pass. And in this exam, like, your score doesn't matter. You just need to pass the exam. They're just assessing your competency as like a clinical knowledge baseline. So yeah, I have got all my resources in the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and all the best. You are all wonderful clinicians, and you will pass the exam. Best of luck.